Jerome Alexander with Magellan College Counseling. I am personally based in the Los Angeles area, and we have 8 counselors here in LA and 4 scattered across the rest of the country. And now that everyone knows how to Zoom, we actually see clients all over the country, which is pretty cool. And I'm really, really excited. This is the second in a series of now 11. I've actually added 2 more onto the end, 11 live stream interviews with experts in college admission. And I'm thrilled that I am welcoming my colleague, Suzie Wynne, to join me today. She is here and she is going to give us a little bit of an overview of the college admission process. So Suzie, I will let you introduce yourself, tell everyone a little bit about your background, and then you can give us your thoughts on how parents and students could be approaching, in general, the college admission process. And I would say this, next week I have someone coming on, I have Libby Brown from the University of Rochester, and she will specifically talk with me the whole time about test optional, what it means, whether or not it's right for you. So Suzie may or may not touch on that little component tonight. And of course, other experts down the road to talk about choosing a college, financial aid, all sorts of awesome topics. But Suzie's going to give us an overview of the college admission process right now. So take it away, Suzie.
Well, thanks, Evelyn. As Evelyn said, I'm Suzie Wynne. I'm also based in Los Angeles. Before I got into college counseling, I was a lawyer for many years, but I've found that this is really a lot more fun working with this age group and their families. I have 3 children, or actually 2 of them are grown at this point. One is recently graduated college with an engineering degree, and I have one that's still in a university pursuing theater and one that's in high school. So I sort of live all areas of it, the postgraduate, being in the university, and still on this crazy path to college. And so I got into doing this because I really love the unique path in trying to find each student's particular way to their future. So, you know, one of the things that Evelyn and I have talked about, and we talk about with our clients a lot, is that the process doesn't have to be scary, right? You know, what people are scared about, I think, or nervous is, are we going to be okay? Is this going to work out? And so what we always say, and what I really think is important in looking at the whole overview of the college process is, you know, control what you can control, right, Evelyn? I mean, we always say, look at those things that you can control, and that will, number one, bring down the anxiety, because we always like to be in control of it, but also reduce that whole fear of the unknown, because as you educate yourself, which is what we try to do with our clients in the process, just baby steps when they're sophomores or juniors, or even into the senior year, we really try to just educate it in a piece by piece fashion. So you bring that whole like stress of the process down. So basically, what can you control in this process? I really think there's probably, I mean, there's a lot of areas, but 3 main places that we can group it into. So, you know, one is your classes and your grades, right? Can you do your best in the most rigorous classes that you can handle and that interest you? Not just taking a class necessarily because you have to, but if you're going to choose to take an AP classes, it's something that excites you, a topic area where you're going to be successful because you actually like the topic. The second is your extracurriculars, because you can control that even in this crazy time that we're living in. And finally, the last area is finding the right fit. You can control the research, educating yourself, getting to know the schools, and even diving deeper into the different majors. And so if you can control what you're doing, even if it's in small little chunks, that will make the whole situation a lot more manageable.
Give us, obviously you said you can control your grades. Give us a couple more examples of what you can control, because I agree with you. One of the things that I find makes people really, really nervous is the unknown. And so if we can help them understand some of the things that they can know and control, they'll feel a little bit less stressed out, I think.
Right, and I completely agree with that. So, in this business, we always like to say it depends, right? So, there are going to be some students, right, who are going to take no honors or AP classes. That's what they can manage, both for their mental health, for where they want to go, and for whatever it is they're pursuing. But then there are going to be students who are looking maybe at, selective or highly selective schools where everyone who's applying has AP and honors classes, right? So the first thing in the process, and this is an overview, is you want to take in those academic core classes, your English, your math, your science, your foreign language, what I miss, your social studies. You want to try to complete the curriculum that your school is offering, right? Because colleges are going to look to make sure that you've done the most you can do at your particular school. So obviously it's going to be, let's say, 4 years of English. That might not be honors English or AP English for the last 2 years, but it's going to be 4 years of English. So I guess the first thing in kind of looking at the process is, are you taking your 5 academic classes, and are you, maxing out? A big question we sometimes get is, do I have to take that 4 years of, language? Again, same issue. It's a choice, right? If you're going to give it up, why are you giving up that 4th year? Or if you're going to take a 4th year, but, it's an AP class versus, let's say, a regular class, why are you taking it? Let's say you're pursuing the STEM field and you want to take another science or another math. It might be completely appropriate to only take 3 years of a language. So it really is both student specific and probably selectivity specific a little bit, but in reducing your anxiety and knowing what to do, you want to try to take the most rigorous schedule that you can take, and that you can balance and still do well. And it doesn't serve anyone well if you're trying to put yourself in with 4 AP classes and you end up with B's and C's, right? So it's finding that balance.
So I have a question. You said that colleges will check to see that you took the most rigorous course load that you could take. How do they know?
Okay, so basically what happens is each high school has what's called a high school profile that they will send along with your transcript and any letters of recommendation if they're required from the particular university. And it talks about what the average GPA is, what the average or mean, it depends on how they actually list it, but of the test scores, how many AP classes a school offers, because there are schools that might offer 20 AP classes and there are schools that may offer 3. So they can tell how hard or how rigorous of a schedule you have chosen. Having said that, the other way is that many of these colleges have regional counselors. So for example, in California, there's RAC, which is the Regional Admission Counselors of California, and they're based here on the West Coast in California for schools that are out of state. So they're familiar with each school and they know that each school has different offerings. And so they can kind of tell on their first read of a file, have you taken advantage of what that school has to offer? Have you pushed yourself? And again, it will depend on the school. You may be talking about 25 to 50 schools that are in that really selected category where everyone is thinking, oh, I have to take all the APs. But then you look at the other 2,000 schools, they may not care as much, right? So it really just, again, it depends, but there's no reason to stress. You can just keep that anxiety down, knowing that if you try to take the most rigorous schedule that you can handle, you'll put yourself in the best situation for you, not for what everyone else is doing.
So one of the questions that I hear a lot is it better to get an A in a regular level class or a B in an AP level class, since you just told me that the colleges can see how many AP classes are available to me?
And I laugh because that's one of the questions that's always asked, and there's an infamous answer from one of the deans of a very highly selective university saying it's better to get an A in an AP class. But joking aside, right, that's not going to work for everyone, right? So you have to look at what your schedule looks like. So if you are taking that extra, if you don't have any AP or honors class and you take one, I would hope that you're taking that one because you feel you can handle it. A B is not bad at all, right? But if taking that extra AP class is making all of your classes become Bs, when you could have had all A's, and without that class pulling everything down. So it's really, you have to weigh, can I still do as the best I can do with that extra class? The one thing you have to understand is that the universities, many of them will unweight your GPA, right? So what they'll do is they'll look at your unweighted GPA. So everyone's on an even playing field. So not every 3.5 is the same, right? Because, well, everyone unweighted will have, if it's a 3.5, but then they'll look and say, you took 5 AP classes, or you took 1 AP class, showing that difference in the rigor.
But shouldn't I, again, if you're telling me that the colleges can see how many AP classes I have at my school, shouldn't I take the most that are possibly available?
My answer to that would be, it depends, because it depends on what you can handle, right? And we all know that you could take all of those classes and get A's in all of those classes and still not get into the schools where the average amount of APs are 8, 9, 10, and sometimes more. So what I would say to a student who is saying, should I take it? I always ask, how is that going to impact you? If you are playing baseball or football or in theater, or you play an instrument, whatever your love or your activity is, are you going to be able to come home at night after, a 2-hour, band practice or a 3-hour football practice and sit down for 5 hours of homework? How are you going to feel about what you want to be doing? So what I tell my clients is, think about you and how you're going to feel that year. Are you going to resent that you took that other class? Or do you love AP? Let's say that's history, like you're a history fanatic. So taking an extra AP because it's something you really enjoy isn't going to bother you.
So you're saying you can control your schedule.
Right.
You can control how many rigorous courses you take. You can't control what other people take.
Right, you can't, and I always, I kind of go like this, and I tell my clients, you have to just, and mostly in senior year, but I would say even now with, course selection, you got to kind of put some mufflers over your ears and not listen to everyone else, because you don't know what they're doing late at night, and you need to do what's going to make you most successful and how you're going to be balanced. It may be that you don't have a lot of extracurriculars, which we can talk about extracurriculars next, so you can take, 5 AP classes. But then the question is, well, that college is going to look at you and go, great, you took 5 AP classes and you have a 4.0, but what else do you do, right? So it's finding that balance. I would say, just like what you can control, it's what can you control so that you can find the balance that makes you happy in high school and beyond, right? Because we talk about fit for college, it's all about being the best version of yourself at college. Well, I would argue it's being the best version of yourself in high school, right? It's always the same thing. So speaking about extracurriculars, you want to do extracurriculars that interest you, and you want to go deep in those, sort of like the APs. You don't want to take 6 APs just to take 6 APs. You want to take them because you're interested in the subject, or you're excited about the intellectual depth that an AP you might find, right? But the same thing applies to extracurriculars. No college is impressed with 10 activities that you do, 1 hour a week, 10 hours a year. They want to know that you're diving into those extracurriculars. But the question that I know that you tell your clients and that I, tell mine is, find a way to spend your free time in a meaningful way to you, right? So, what is it that you enjoy doing, and delve deep into those particular, those items. And how can you maybe find a leadership role? Leadership is not for everyone. You don't have to be a leader in the classic sense, but how can you be involved? Leader or follower, taking on roles that are useful to whatever it is that you're doing.
Why is this so important to colleges? Why do they care about this stuff?
About the extracurriculars?
Ah.
They're looking to find an engaged community on their campus. So they're building a class, a student body, a community, and every college has a distinct, maybe the way they are. So some might be known for being very intellectually curious, right? Some may be known for being very sporty or community service oriented. Sometimes they have institutional priorities, so they'll be looking for specific items. So maybe a school that's really community service oriented might be looking for those kinds of people. But even though they're looking for people who have a lot of community service, they're also looking for people who have done a lot of other things, because rather than when we were younger and they wanted you to be broad and be able to do everything, they're really looking more for, like, I don't want to say pointy, but people who have interests, right? People who are, and again, another word I don't really love is passionate, but people who are engaged in what they like to do, so that when they're on campus, that admission officer can see you as a student on their campus.
And I'm guessing you were avoiding using pointy, but I would just say I use pointy, and the reason that we call it pointy is that most people our age, high school, college student, parent age, remember being told to be well-rounded. And so pointy is really the opposite of well-rounded. And so when we applied to college, we did the student government and the sports and the music and the whatever, and as Suzie said, the broad range of things, that's not necessarily what colleges are looking for. So as they build a well-rounded class, they're looking for pointy components, individuals to make up that well-rounded class. So I don't actually shy away from pointy, just because I think it illustrates that what many people think colleges are looking for, they're not actually looking for.
Right, and as we said before, I mean, colleges have institutional priorities, right? They might be looking for a tuba player or a swimmer or a debater if they have a debate team. So in that way, it's very pointy because it's a very specific item. Other times, they could just be looking overall for, and it doesn't have to be someone who's a leader. You could be someone who, is involved in 3 or 4 things, but that you go to every board meeting. You're the person who's there at 6 a.m. helping set up and staying the whole time and cleaning up, but maybe you weren't the person who spoke because you're an introvert. You don't have to be an extrovert to be able to show all the great things that you can do. And that's where the essays and your letters of recommendation and your activities will showcase those things.
Can you give us an example? Because sometimes I worry that the process is a little bit easier if you're an extrovert and it's a little harder if you're not.
I think if you're an extrovert, it can be easier because typically if you're extroverted, you can talk about yourself a little bit more. So maybe it's easier to get it on the paper. But I find when we're having our sessions and we're working on those essays and we're asking the questions and the adjectives and how would you describe yourself, those key things in essay brainstorming, a lot of that comes out. And, I've worked with a bunch of students who maybe they're quieter and, they could even have been on like an academic decathlon team, which you would think that would make you an extrovert, but actually really very introverted, someone who maybe stays home, plays board games with their parents, things of that nature, but yet is a team player, is a good writer, and someone, when push comes to shove, is there both opening and closing any practice session. And when that's written up, that they have in preparation of, let's say, academic decathlon, or maybe not so much debate, but it could be, is the person who's there like we said, before everyone starts and leaves after. Same thing with sports. You might not be team captain. You do not have to be team captain. Maybe you're the person that takes care of the room. You help get the towels. You're there helping the coach, you're dragging the field, you're, whatever it is, it's those things. You do not have to be the team captain to be noticed.
Sometimes I feel like we're doing college counselor FAQs, but sometimes people ask me, like, is student government better than theater? Is 4 years of a sport better than, 50 hours of volunteering? What do you say when people ask you things like
I say it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're engaged in it and you're consistent and you're doing it. And to that sort of end, what can you do like in it to show that you're not just doing it for college? Because the whole thing is that you want to be your authentic self, right? So if you're interested in community service, do community service. And now in this crazy time that we're in, there are still online, you can still help out. People are sewing masks, people are coming up with really creative ways. The people who are doing that are doing it because they still love it. Like community service, social justice, those are their kinds of things. So what is it that interests you? Maybe it's student government. Well, can you hold, your ASB or something online? Can you figure out a way to help your school out? There are lots of things you can still be doing for extracurriculars right now, even though we're sort of in this virtual world that you might not normally be doing.
Did you join a new club as a senior?
Well, you could. I've worked with kids who have started new clubs as seniors, but imagine if you're the admission counselor and you are looking at something and you haven't done anything, and then all of a sudden in your supposed area of interest, you started a club. How's that going to look? Now, having said that, maybe you did something really great during the summer, it was eye-opening, and you want to bring that to your school, sure. But it's not going to be something that's looked upon unless you've really made a dent in that area. We look upon that highly.
Okay, so we talked about course selection, we talked about extracurricular activities. What's the next important thing to know if we're just looking at this sort of from a high level?
Right, so I would say finding the right fit. So, and what I mean by that is spending time, and you can start this as a freshman, right? Finding a time to research colleges for the best, like academic, social, and financial fit, right? Just like, if it's kids listening or parents thinking about the finances, how am I going to pay for this? People may have been planning with 524s, years ago. It's sort of the same idea, right? So if a college is coming onto your high school and your high school will allow you to go. If right now is probably the best of all worlds because there are so many information sessions. You really, yes, you can definitely get zoomed out, right? But they will be recorded, a lot of them. So you might not watch them now, right? And you might be a freshman, but go onto the YouTube channels. Go see what the different colleges are that you might be interested in, right? And it isn't one size fits all. So what I would say with finding the right fit is please, please, please keep an open mind. I once heard, and I think it was the Colleges That Change Lives, which was based on a book, but I don't know, they might 30 colleges or so. I don't know how many are in there now, 40. They're typically small liberal arts schools that are really, really student-centered and student-focused, right? And I remember they once had said about really looking at the schools and getting away from the names that right? Because just because you don't know the name doesn't mean it isn't a good school. And the director of Colleges That Change Lives, she had said at the time, and I thought this was really appropriate, she mentioned a high school in LA that's very reputable and people in LA know the name. And then said, if you went back east and you asked families there about that high school, no one knew the name. It doesn't make that high school any less amazing, right? So it's the same idea. So
everyone's heard of Olive Garden, but that doesn't mean they serve the best food.
Correct, right? So I would just say in this process is keep an open mind, because actually keeping an open mind and looking broadly will actually reduce your stress. Yes, initially you might be overwhelmed because there's so many schools, but what you'll find is because there are so many schools, if you want to go to college, you will go to college because there is a college out there pretty much for everyone. So if you keep that open mind, I really think that you can find those. So coming up with a balanced list of schools will definitely keep you know, keep the stress down.
So some of my more stressed out families come to me with words like, but she's worked so hard.
Right.
And he really deserves, you know, top 25. How do you, what's the answer to that?
It's a hard one because as a parent, I understand, because what it is parents are watching kids work hard. And yeah, they work really, really hard. Here's the problem. You're in my household. I've got my child who's worked really, really hard, right? And there's what, 40,000 high schools in the country, something like that. Even if it was just one who was just one, which I would argue there's probably 100 at each school, but that, you know, whatever. That's 40,000 students for a limited spot. So working hard gets you, I would say, like a seat at the table. You can feel, and I've said this to some of my kiddos who are high flyers, you know, really high test scores, high GPA, everything. You can feel comfortable and you can respect yourself and know that you can apply to any school in this country and feel good about applying. You've sort of earned the right to have no one look at your application and say why. But deserving it is a hard one. It is a hard one because we want all of our kids to do it. I would argue, though, that what made that school so special in the first place. And if there's a particular school out there that a family thinks is like the end all be all, what I try to do is say, what is it about that school? And let's find a few others that also have those things, because there's no school that just has everything. There's plenty of them out there that can meet those different requirements. Where we end is just engagement, because we talk about demonstrate interest a lot and showing the schools that you care about them and that you're interested. And I was on yet another Zoom call with 3 different colleges last week, and they were saying to reframe it as engagement. And I really thought about that and agree with it, because engagement is what it's all about. That's what the schools are looking for, because they want students who are going to be on their campus and be engaged, right? So engage with, in that first thing, with your grades and your everything. Engage with your classes and your teachers. Engage in your extracurriculars. You should be able to do this even right now because you've chosen a few that are really important to you. Engage in your search process and be willing to be open. And, you know, engage with schools that both you may be interested in and may interest you. You know, you're going to start getting a lot of emails. Open them up. Maybe something will, you know, interest you that you want to be involved in.
So be open to names you haven't necessarily heard of. What if I'm getting hundreds of emails and I don't want to go to Utah or Arizona or?
Well, I think, like I said, I mean, we're trying to reduce anxiety, right? So, and make the process a little bit easier. So if you're not interested in a state, you know, maybe you don't look, but maybe something's intriguing to you. So don't look at it maybe the first time, but as you do your research, you may learn that the major or something that you're interested in, the best program is in Utah. So maybe then you start researching it.
We have a question. So Stacy wants to know, what things can students be doing right now with this lockdown situation? It's a really good question.
That is a good question. So from the grades perspective, you know, keep plugging away at what they're doing. There's not much you can do except keep working, whether it's pass fail for your particular school or by grade, just working in the constructs of that. The AP exams, if you have a sophomore or junior probably at this point, study. I know that they're different. We don't know yet how the schools are going to look at them. A lot of the colleges are saying they're going to accept them. Some are saying we don't know yet. So my philosophy is keep all doors open. So study for those if you're in a position and you're taking them. As far as extracurriculars, I know that what I would recommend to Stacey is to go onto our website. I know that between our newsletter and some of the recent blog posts, we've given some suggestions on places that you can look. But like if there's an area of interest, Coursera is one place where you can take classes. They're usually free, but you can get a certificate in some of them. So like, let's say you're interested in like graphic design, you could take classes and actually get a certificate. That would be one thing.
Yeah.
edX talks, and even looking on some of the different colleges, they're putting out information. As far as other kinds of extracurriculars, obviously it's hard to, let's say, play your sport right now. But I would say that there are things out there, even from orchestra or theater. Reach out to whatever your interest is, be bold. Reach out. Maybe you can do social media marketing for a theater company. Maybe whatever your talent is, think about that and try to think outside of the box.
I told a client who's a baseball and basketball player that he could be making instructional videos. He's got a little brother. I mean, I've said to kids, whatever you do, whatever your activity is, teach other people how to do it. Right. You could make a little YouTube channel. You could make little itty bitty TikTok videos. I mean, social media honestly has become a huge avenue for kids to continue, even if they're not doing their team sport, like you were saying, they can show other people how to do it. You could cook with your mom and make videos about that.
Yeah, I would argue even with summer camps, not knowing exactly what's going to happen. You know, look, we're doing a Facebook Live. You know, if there's something that you feel comfortable and you have a talent, you know, let's say you play saxophone. You know what I mean? You could put it out to everyone that you're going to give saxophone lessons at this time, you know, every week. You may get no one in the beginning. You may get a lot at the end. You may have no one the whole entire year, but talk about perseverance. You're playing to yourself, right? There's a college essay. I played to myself all summer long. But the point is, think a little outside the box because there's plenty of opportunities.
I think be bold was really good advice too. You've never done a Facebook Live, have you?
I have not.
There you go.
Which is why as I'm looking, I'm noticing that my camera is clearly not like, not, you know, straight on. So, you know, it is what it is, right?
Next time it'll be better.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Any last advice? That was pretty comprehensive advice.
With respect to that or just in general?
No, just in general.
I would just tell people to be their authentic version of themselves. A lot of times people come to me and they say, can you help package my child and things like that? And I say no. I say, I can help your child be the best version and present the best version of themselves and help find those things. So a lot of times kids don't give credit to themselves for things they do. And I think that hasn't changed. That won't change. And that's probably the one constant really actually in all of this is if you are true to yourself and you are that authentic version, coronavirus or not, that's what the colleges want to see.
Right. And I would say my guest, I think June 25th is Melissa Falk, who is Dean of Admission at Magellan College. And we're going to spend the entire 30, however many minutes we go, talking about what could be different about this year. I'm personally convinced that there are many, as Suzie said, many parts of the college search and application process that will not change for the class of 2021. Of course, what you're hearing about is this is changing, that's changing, and lots of things will change. But so I thought it would be really good to hear directly from a dean, literally the person making the decisions herself. So thank you, Suzie. You did a great job on your first Facebook Live.
Thank you.
And I did a great job of figuring out how to read the questions as they came in. So next week, as I said, Libby Brown from the University of Rochester, and we will spend the whole time talking about test optional. What does it mean? Who does it benefit? Why do colleges do it? Should you send your scores? Should you still sit for the SAT? We know you have all those questions. So come back next Thursday, same time, 5:30 Pacific. 8:30 Eastern. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.